promoting something that seemed to be showing such success around the world. This first clip, essentially, you're asking him, you know, who's involved, what's happening here. Let's take a look at this.
I think I'm in a very sensitive position here. What I'm trying to do.
People are in sensitive positions. They're in hospital and ICUs dying, and they need this medicine.
Well,
this is what I don't get. You know, because you're not a clinician, you're not at the coalface, you're not seeing people dying every day, and this medicine prevents deaths by 80%. So 80% of those people who are dying today don't need to die because there's ivermectin.
There are a lot, as I said, there are a lot of different opinions about this. As I said, some people
We're looking at the data. It doesn't matter what other people say. We are the ones who are tasked with and we have the experience to look at the data and reassure everybody that this cheap and effective treatment will save lives. It's clear. You don't have to say, well, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that. It's absolutely crystal clear. We can save lives today if we can get the government to buy ivermectin.
So here he's saying things like, well, I mean, there's not a consensus. There's other people that have different points of view. And you're like, they haven't researched this at the same level that we have. What was the energy that you were sensing from him?
Well, he wasn't making eye contact. He was being very, he was trying to avoid making eye contact. He was kind of, it just felt like he was making excuses and just not coming up front and just saying what was actually going on.
And there were so many people's lives hanging in the balance, and it seems like in this call, you really tried to wake him up. Like, what are we talking about? Here's an excerpt where you try to really get him to admit you do realize that people are dying in huge numbers. We could make a difference. It's I guess, an attempt to reach out and poke him through the Zoom call. Let's take a look at this.
Rest assured, I'm not going to let this last for a long time. I'm not saying we keep going for another year.
The fact that you're saying you're not going to let it last for a long time makes you realize the impact of your work. So how long are you going to let people carry on dying unnecessarily? Up to you. What is the timeline that you've allowed for this then?
Well, what I hope is that this stalemate that we're in doesn't last very long. It lasts a matter of weeks, and I guarantee I will push for this to last for as short amount of time as possible.
So how long do you think the stalemate will go on for? How long do you think you'll
well, okay,
allow the stalemate to go on for?
From my side, every single new trial that comes through, we're going to be aggressively adding it on, and I think end of Feb will be there. 6 weeks.
How many people die every day?
Well, there is a whole group of people who think that ivermectin is complete rubbish.
I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about them. I'm saying we know the evidence. How many people die every day?
Oh, sure. I mean, 15,000 people a day.
15,000 people a day times 6 weeks?
Yeah, sure. No, I get it.
I mean, it's really shocking. You can tell this is a man who, it's like he's got a million voices in his head. He's trying to talk about these people that are saying they don't believe in ivermectin. We don't know, who those people are. But it's really amazing, the point, 6 weeks. And frankly, the statement in his paper, his conclusion, is that we're going to have to wait for randomized control studies to be done. So it doesn't matter if he wants to keep, he already had a pile of great studies. What is adding new studies going to do? How is that going to remedy this situation within 6 weeks? Was that sort of what you were thinking? That's not going to get the job done.
Yeah, and it just felt like it was sort of delaying tactics. I could see, it's unlikely to be 6 weeks, but I was hoping, at the end, well, okay, if it's just 6 weeks, then, but I didn't really have any reason to believe him.
So as you're sitting in this call, I mean, I think it's pretty harsh. You go right at him, right? I mean, you are really saying there's thousands of people, as he admits to, dying, every single day. Did you feel like if I can't get this shifted right now, I mean, in a way, the weight of the world is on your shoulders. If this paper goes forward, millions of people are going to die because they're not going to get a drug that you clearly have looked at and you said is saving lives. Did you feel like if I can't convince him here, all is lost?
I did feel that it was a kind of make or break. You know, I didn't know really where we would go from there because we're talking months now for new trials, and how were we going to get the message across, because this is the WHO consultant, this is the WHO paper, and they were basically dictating international health policy.
So you decide to get from him who's behind this, what is going on, you know, who's affecting you. Here's you sort of really drilling into him on that question.
So who helped whose conclusions are those on the review that you've done? Who's not listed as an author, who's actually contributed?
Well, I mean, I don't really want to get into. I mean,
I think it needs to be clear. I would like to know who are these other voices that are in your paper that are not acknowledged. Does Unitate have a say? Do they influence what you write?
Unitate has a say in the conclusions of the paper. Yeah.
Okay. So so who is it in Unitate then? Who is sharing who is giving you opinion on your evidence?
Well, it's just the people there. I
thought Unitate is just a charity. Is it not a charity that actually have? So they have a say in your conclusions.
Yeah.
So, in many ways, I feel like there you have it. You have the smoking gun. You're asking who is it, and he says Unitate has a part of this conclusion, of writing this conclusion. Can you give us a sense of who Unitate is?
It's a non-governmental organization that really has does a lot of collaboration with the World Health Organization, and Bill Gates is on the board. And also is highly influential in the World Health Organization, and does, you know, so there was a lot of industry influence, I would say, because I don't really see Bill Gates as a philanthropist. I see him as a businessman. So, you know, I was concerned when I realized that in actual fact the people at Unitate were influencing the conclusions of a scientific manuscript. And in fact, you know, it really smacks of interference, because the names, you know, usually if you contribute to a paper, you're named either as an author or you're acknowledged in the acknowledgement section, and that was not the case. So we had a whole lot of authors listed of the primary papers, which was also another irregularity, because usually the people who are involved in writing in the papers don't go as an author on the review. And then we had
so just to be clear, let me just, for people that aren't used to like this conversation, this is a review. It's a meta-analysis review taking in all the papers that have been looking at ivermectin from around the world, and then the review tends to list those scientists and doctors who were part of the review. You're saying that this giant list of names included those authors of the original papers that were being reviewed. So they put them in as though they were authors on this review, which is not the standard way this is normally done. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, it's not standard.
Have you reached out to any of the people that were on those original studies or papers to see, did you agree, or like what did you feel about how your paper was used in this meta-analysis that basically said these studies aren't enough to sort of warrant recommending ivermectin?
Yes, I reached out to Professor Femi Babalola, who did a very good study, a double-blind randomized controlled trial in Nigeria. You know, he said the whole process had been rather peculiar because, you know, he'd been considered part of this team on that preprint. And he had thought it was strange the way the conclusions had been, you know, kind of against ivermectin, the use of ivermectin. And then And then he was surprised that his name, that had been taken off the final publication, because that preprint only got published in July, despite it having an enormous impact on health practice and policy before then. Just on that point, when I contacted our UK authorities to say what's happening, and here is the evidence pack on ivermectin, they responded to say, well, Andrew Hill's review says that more studies are needed. So even though it wasn't published or peer-reviewed, it had an enormous impact. And if you actually, that's quite a good point. If you go back to his conclusions, in his paper, he says these studies were not peer-reviewed or published. Well, his review wasn't peer-reviewed or published until July,
right.
And it had a huge impact on health policy.
Okay. We're all talking about, we've been talking about on the highway so much about where's the funding coming from, follow the money, like what's going on, why would anyone change their tune? Well, we see a huge investment into the university. Here's the headlines I want to bring to your attention. This is UNITAID. Funding sees launch of world's first long-acting medicine center at University of Liverpool. University of Liverpool is where Andrew Hill works. This is the university with which he's coming from. UNITAID is funding, we're talking, 40, it says established as part of a 40 million international research consortium. That's January 12th. This funding comes into the university, and by January 16th, there's an early print, and then January 18th, a preprint that you're looking at, where suddenly there's this huge caveat shutting down the recommendation of ivermectin for the WHO. Were you aware of that UNITAID investment into his university at that moment?
No, I wasn't. I only found out afterwards. And also I'm aware that UNITAID has some investment in long-acting ivermectin. So, that's injectable ivermectin.
Okay.
Which also subsequently I've realized may have had an influence.
And so in this last clip that we have, where you're really trying to say, what are you doing?
What I've got to do, my responsibility is to get as much support as I can to get this drug approved as quickly as
Well, you're not going to get it approved the way you've written that conclusion. You've actually shot yourself in the foot, and you've shot us all in the foot. Everybody trying to do something good. You have actually completely destroyed it.
Okay. Well, that's where I guess we'll have to agree to differ.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you sleep at night, honestly.
Okay.
It's amazing to hear him say there that he obviously still believes in it. He's saying it's just a matter of time, yet we are now a year out from this conversation, and ivermectin is almost illegal. I mean, it's almost illegal to use it. California, here in America, is looking to pass a law that any doctor that prescribes things like ivermectin can have their license taken away. This has become this, this flashpoint in people's lives hang in the balance. And as you predict in that moment, and he wants you to agree to differ, you're saying you're going to destroy ivermectin. Essentially, that is what happened here, isn't it?
I think for me, what's really important about ivermectin is that ivermectin is actually the key to unlocking all the secrets of this pandemic. Because, it turns out hydroxychloroquine was squashed as well. Mm-hmm. And if ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine had been approved, there would have been no lockdowns, there would have been no